In the fall of 2009, a pair of brazen sex attacks shattered the peace in a tiny place in Canada called Tweed. 4 weeks after the second assault, Larry Jones, a longtime Tweed resident, was picked up by the police for questioning in connection with both attacks. He says the police interrogated him for 3.5 hours.
How'd you break in? You break in the door? Do you have keys? Or how'd you get in there?
Why were the cops so sure they had their man? Because the second victim, Larry's neighbor, had called to say she thought his voice matched that of her intruder.
He said, well, have you ever been in those houses? I said, well, the first house, I don't know what you're talking about. But the second house? I said, yes, I was in the house about 3 years ago.
Larry says he was so shocked by the questions, it was all he could do to answer them.
I couldn't not even believe that they would even think that.
Because if there was one thing Larry Jones knew without a doubt in the world, it was that he was innocent. He'd never sexually assaulted either woman.
Me, of all people, who's lived here for 44 years, and after living here for 44 years on this road, I'm going to go start raping and pillaging our single women on the road? It's just ridiculous.
Larry gave the police DNA samples and fingerprints, and he promised to return to the station for a lie detector test, which he did in due course, and which he says he aced. But that didn't mean Larry Jones got his old life back, or his reputation.
I've always done everything honestly and truthfully, and then all you've done all your life is gone out the window. It's just not right.
Larry Jones would eventually be cleared, and meanwhile, police investigating that series of break-ins in Brenda and Brian's neighborhood in the Ottawa suburb about 150 miles that way seemed no closer to nabbing their intruder. Ann Marsden Cook was trying to put her home invasion and that taunting computer message behind her, and still no investigators were able to connect any of these crimes. But then why should they, so far apart? And when something truly awful happened in a nearby town in that direction, again, nobody was able to think of any reason why there should be a link. Marie-France Como was by all accounts vibrant and vivacious, a dedicated consumer of great meals, new countries, the odd pretty dress. Alain Plante was captivated the moment he saw her.
First thing that caught me is her smile, obviously, because she has a beautiful smile.
Sadly for him, she already had a boyfriend, so he waited. A year later, in the spring of 2004, she approached him, and he was done waiting.
We started dating, and it went pretty well. It didn't take so long for me to move with her.
He took his 2 sons with him. So she essentially became a mother or...
Stepmother, yes.
Stepmother to your children.
She did her job pretty well.
What did you like about living with Marie-France?
Basically, she was in love with life in general, yes.
She could also be feisty. A temper, huh?
Temper? Something was wrong she would say about it, that's for sure. She wouldn't keep it inside.
Both Alain and Marie-France were French-Canadian. Both came from military families. Early on, she chose to make the military her life, too, becoming what's called a traffic tech.
It's the people who actually load the stuff on the aircraft, and they have to balance the weight of the aircraft.
She served in Germany and Dubai and Afghanistan. Then in 2008, after more than a decade in the military, Corporal Marie-France Como became a flight attendant with the 437 Squadron here at the sprawling Canadian Forces Base in Trenton. The base is just down the road from Belleville and not far from Tweed. And soon, Corporal Como was chosen to work the flights for Canada's top leaders. She was happy.
Oh, yeah. She loved her job.
But it was also that year, after 4.5 years together, Alain Plante and Marie-France Como split up. He moved away. She stayed close to the base, living here in a town called Brighton. They were apart, Alain says, but still in close contact. He remembers a conversation they had in late November 2009.
She just got back from India, Japan, Singapore, and she was telling me all those new countries she discovered and all the new meals she could taste, and it was fun.
It was their last conversation. 3 days later, November 25, 2009, Corporal Marie-France Comeau's body was discovered in her home, lying on her bed.
I was told on the 26th.
Told only that she was dead, nothing more. And with a heavy heart and 100 questions, Alain Plante went to Brighton to find out for himself. What happened to the woman he still loved? Horror awaited.
That's when I found out she was murdered in her house.
What is it like to hear that?
I was in shock, but how to describe that?
There were no words in any language, Alain would learn. Comeau's murder had been brutal, a sexual homicide. Former FBI investigator Craig Ackley examined this case at Dateline's request. He had no role in the investigation.
What was clear was that somebody had raped her and somebody had killed her. And somebody had spent time in the home.
Which, again, in the dismal business of investigating this sort of thing, suggests an organized criminal as opposed to a disorganized criminal.
Sure. It suggests somebody who spent some time planning the offense, understanding he had time to go into the house and spend whatever time he needed with the victim, which suggests reconnaissance activity.
At the base, CFB Trenton, Corporal Comeau's grieving colleagues held a memorial service. Even the base commander, Colonel Russell Williams, got involved, sent a letter of condolence to her father. But who could have done this? Investigators were stumped. Although they looked at anybody close to Marie, anybody including Alain Plante.
I went through some interrogation through the police.
That must have been very strange.
There's one time, one policeman came to me and asked me for my DNA. That's when I freaked out, and I had to explain to them that I wasn't even there. I was 4.5 hours from there.
Alain cooperated with investigators, and he was cleared. And when the forensics people were finished in the house and the police handed over the keys, it was Alain, as Marie's executor, who had it cleaned and emptied.
So I saw the crime scene. So
what was that like?
you see blood on the wall, you see blood on the floor. It's like CSI, but it's not CSI.
He had to step outside for a cigarette to steady himself. And then he went back in, resolved to take care of Marie-France Comeau's last business on earth, and to laugh, in his broken-hearted way, about the easygoing woman whose life he'd once shared.
We got rid of all her civilian clothes. So in every coat, every pants, she had money. Just change, a dollar bill. So it made me laugh because that was Marie. Right there was Marie.
Ann Marson Cook and Howard Gray lived just 45 minutes' drive from Comeau's house. They heard about the murder on the news. They never connected it to Ann's break-in, or the Tweed attacks, for that matter.
No, absolutely none.
It was, she was military.
But that was before they knew what they know now. Before another awful crime shook their community. Only then would all these crimes be connected. Only then would the perpetrator be unmasked in a story that would rock a nation.